The changeling is a child, young and inexperienced. His heart is light with joy and hope. Cartoons are his philosophy, and games his reality. The changeling is an adult. His limbs are fully grown, his mind is heavy with knowledge and responsibility and money and politics and... The changeling is a teenager, tumultuous and inconsistent. He is stuck in the limbo of age. He is ruled by his emotions. He shields himself from the crushing silence with overdrive and tape filters. The changeling is an old man. His teeth are old with wisdom. His mind wanders in silence and company. His eyes are heavy with life. The changeling is a man. His shoulders are wide. He is deft with a razor. He has the strength to fight and the kindness to not. He longs one day for a wife and a daughter. The changeling is a girl. His hair and nails are long. He is nurturing and maternal. He leads with neither brawn nor brain, but heart. He longs for beauty and magic and ponies. He has even loved a boy. The changeling is someone else. Pieces glued together. Television and family and internet and friendship, old and new. Dissected and sewn into a patchwork human. The changeling doesn't know his true self. He thinks perhaps he never had one, only the borrowed skin, the stolen voice, the plagiarized heart. The changeling's friends, he says, are actors, people who have joined in the guerrilla theater he's built around his hive, that laugh and sing and dance because the show is just that good, the story too compelling. Who wouldn't want to be a character? The changeling is scared of changing. He does it every day. He runs from it every day, until it can catch him, and he can thank it. The changeling's life is easy. The changeling's life is hard. The changeling's life is fake. The changeling's life is very real. The changeling needs to be alone. The changeling needs to be befriended. The changeling hates being. The changeling loves being. The changeling wants to change. The changeling can be anything. Perhaps he'll be himself, and that can be enough. So, in case it wasn't already obvious, today's video is going to be maybe a bit different than what you're used to seeing for these transition logs. And the reason that I wanted to do that was because today, February the 15th, when I'm uploading this video, is the 1-year anniversary of me coming out as trans. And it's not really that far off from the 1-year anniversary of me discovering that I was trans. And I think I want to take that opportunity to really talk about that and maybe go more in depth than I normally would in a video like this, where it's only a few minutes of me just covering the basics. Because the story of me discovering myself as a trans woman is maybe just not quite the same as I'm used to hearing from other trans people, and it's a story that I just think would be nice to tell. So I think it should be clear by now that this transition log clearly didn't begin at the beginning of my transition. Obviously, there were some processes that I had already started going through, or that I am currently going through, that I just haven't had the time to bring up. The only thing I can say for sure is that this series did start at the exact moment I started taking HRT. But other than that, there's so many things that these videos are just never going to be able to capture. And to some extent, though, I think that's because I don't think I ever could have captured every single step in my transition. And what I mean specifically is, I don't think it's quite so easy to say where transition has begun. Because I think it's maybe harder than people would think to point to an exact moment and say, oh, my transition begins here, now. After all, when I first started making these videos, at that point, I had already gone through several months of voice therapy. I had already gone to a couple of appointments for hair removal, specifically on my face, though it hasn't really been enough to have any noticeable effect. I had already been working with my family for several months to help make the change with myself and them of both my name and pronouns. And even before that, even before I had come out, there are moments like me going off to college and trying to go by a more feminine name, or me going to my high school's gay straight alliance and saying that, I wouldn't really mind if someone were to call me she, and all this other long list of things that, go through my life where at the time I definitely didn't see them as some sort of proof that I was trans or that I was a woman. But in retrospect, I think it's easy to see that no, those were an actual part of this process. On the other hand, though, I always feel weird talking about those moments as if they lead up to this specific thing of me being trans, because while I want to make it clear that this is something that's certainly been going on in my life even before I was realizing it, I don't want to get caught up in other things that people could point to and say, well, this was part of you being trans, when in reality it might not have been. I don't want people to, look at my life before where I was painting my nails and wearing skirts and watching My Little Pony, and to use that as, well, that there was proof all along that she was always supposed to be trans, because to me it didn't really feel that way. I mean, it feels weird to say now that I'm on this side of things, but I had examined my own gender. I had questioned my own gender many, many times in my life and had always come to the same answer, that I was a man, because of course I was. Why would I be anything else? Which is why, when the events that followed, which I'm going to discuss, actually happened, they were maybe not the easiest to accept with myself. I guess the one event that I can say definitely kicked things off, though, was deep and late one night when I was down whatever YouTube rabbit hole I'm always going down. And I watched a video by one of my favorite creators, PhilosophyTube. And in her coming out video titled Identity, a Trans Coming Out Story, she talks a lot about her own way and how she reached this conclusion, and her own struggles with being before kind of a, important masculine figure to a big part of her audience. And, I don't have an audience, but I did have friends, and I think to some extent I had put some stock in my identity to my friends as being tied to being cis and being heterosexual. And it was a very confusing identity to try and untangle. And the thing that stuck out the most to me in her video was, what was it? It was, and I think the thing that stuck out to me the most in her video was the statement where she describes discovering queerness within yourself as seeing it in other people and feeling this spark that attracts you to it, and not really knowing what it is until much later you realize, oh, that was recognition within yourself. And at that line, I realized that that was something I had felt in a lot of creators, a lot of characters, a lot of people that I looked up to, when ultimately they would come out as trans, and particularly as trans women. And that made me think a lot about my life. It made me think a lot about who I was and who I might be. And in that moment, in a very beautiful but very scary way, I felt myself, the identity that I had built for decades, finally beginning to crumble down. And not really knowing how to address these things, having no guidance, not even knowing if what I was feeling was really what I was meant to be. I decided to reach out to someone close to me who had gone through something very similar.
Hey, long shot, but you wouldn't happen to be up right now, would you?
I'm at work right now, buddy. What's up?
You sure you're not too busy? I don't want to be being a bother to you if you are. It's something that can wait if it has to.
I'll always make time for my buddies.
Thanks. So, again, sorry if this is sort of coming out of nowhere or if this is like invasive or personal or whatever, but you're like the only person I know personally that I can ask something like this. So, I guess. How did you, like, figure out that you were trans?
Okay, sit down, motherfucker, because Grandma Citrus is going to tell you a story. So, it all started when I was like 5 years old. Basically, TLDR, my sisters would dress me up as like a doll, and it felt more natural to me. Eventually, I just started to do it myself and was constantly thinking, man, it'd be better if I was born a girl. And that was like when I was 13, I read about being trans, I was like, yeah, no, I could totally be into that.
Funny. I don't know what I was expecting, but that sounds like a really typical trans story. No offense. It's almost like subverting my expectations by not subverting them.
Well, typical for trans women with older sisters.
Yeah, I guess.
But yeah, it's fairly normal. There are others, like a friend of mine who was an only child. She just didn't feel right in her own skin. Like, ever. She just started experimenting with pronouns and clothing till she found herself.
Do you think it's always like that? Like, there's always this feeling at even a young age?
Oh, hell no! I know a guy where it was literally a switch for him. Mid-50s, wife, children. He describes his experience as waking up one day and just not feeling feminine anymore.
So, someone could live their whole life as one gender, just not even questioning it. Maybe even finding things in that they were secure with, and still, one day, just find that they were actually trans?
Yeah, basically.
So, I guess there's no avoiding the next question any longer. What do you think I would be like if I was a girl?
What are you like now? Not to be like facetious or however the fuck you spell that word.
No, that's a good question. Give me a bit. I'm still reeling.
But I'm totally accepting of anyone who acts in any way that they find validating. So the question isn't how would you see me, but rather how would I be different?
So, on the personality side of things, I think everything's more or less the same. I know myself to be a very compassionate, considerate, and understanding person. I don't think gender would or even could change something like that. Sexuality, I don't think would be altered. I'm still pretty comfortable in knowing that I can feel romantic feelings for both genders. Maybe all genders? Again, going through a lot at the moment, but only feeling sexual attraction towards women. I think it's the physical appearance where I get hung up. I'll be straight with you. I don't like the way I look. And some of the things I don't like are the more masculine traits. Like all this fucking body hair or however weight I am. I don't know why I think of overweight as male, but for some reason it really hits there. But also, those are things I've wanted to change for years. Even when I was occasionally proud of being a cis man, it's often just out of sheer laziness that I end up looking how I do. And even if it's only been on occasion or for a quick goof or costume, I've tried to present as female or be a girl before. I know how much work it is, and I know that I'm often too lazy or unfocused to keep up that work. And even after all that work, I was never able to convince anyone. I was always just a dude in a skirt to other people, and to myself. It feels dumb to say stuff like this, but I struggle a lot with the feeling that I'm an ugly man, and I think I'd make an uglier woman. And that thought genuinely crushes me.
Well, I don't think that. But here's the thing. I feel like your terminology is too binary. How do I say this? So, those traits aren't really inherently masculine or feminine. You don't have to be either of those, nor want to change them. So, this may be hard for you to hear, I don't know, but I've always thought of you as gender non-conforming. Non-binary, basically. Not really a guy or a girl, but also both, if that makes sense. Sorry, this is a difficult topic to have over text, and I'm not sure if my message is coming through.
No kidding. No, you're doing great. Seriously, thank you.
But you don't need to be a man or a woman.
I think I tried playing around with stuff like that in high school, by which I mean I went to a single meeting for our gay straight alliance where I said I would be comfortable with either he or she, and then had nobody call me either. I also tried going by a feminine name when I first went off to college, but doing that felt like putting a barrier in front of everyone I met, and I think ultimately led to my feelings of isolation and eventually my leaving there. But that could also have been from me actually being distant from all my current friends for the first time, and I just associate it with the name change. My point is, I've definitely thought about a more binary identity, but it doesn't have the same effect on me as being a woman does. Like, thinking about non binary doesn't feel like enough of a change for me. The truth is, as I see it, is that there are things that I like that are feminine, or at least that I perceive as feminine, and I enjoy them because they are feminine. While there are things about myself that I dislike that I perceive as masculine, and I dislike them because they are masculine, but I'm not sure if that applies to me as a whole.
Okay, I see. But then the question here is, do you want to stay Ben Ayers the guy, or do you want to be someone different?
Hell of a question.
Well, there are really feminine guys and really masculine ladies.
Yeah, I know that.
It's a heavy topic, and I'm sure you've been thinking about it for a long time to come with me with all this stuff. I just wanted to say that I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me about it. It means a whole lot. Sorry to derail the entire conversation, but I wanted to get that out there.
No, you're good. I'm really glad you're taking the time to do this. Also, thanks for the benefit of the doubt, but if I'm being honest, other than the bits and pieces of playing with gender I mentioned above, I've only been seriously thinking about being a woman for like a few hours. I literally just saw the new Philosophy Tube video of her coming out, and somehow that, of all the several trans stories I've heard in my life, suddenly actually threw everything I knew into question. God, that sounds shallow even for me, but it's the truth. But to answer your earlier question, I like Ben. I think he's a really outstanding guy, and I do emphasize guy in that sentence. I think him being able to be the kind of person that he is and still be a dude at the end of the day says a lot about how he views and how I view concepts like masculinity. I can't even say I dislike being him. There have been times where I think Ben Ayers is exactly who other people need, or hell, even I need to be at the time. But I don't know if I always enjoy that being me. I enjoy playing Ben, I guess. But as far as staying him, that's where I start to question things. Also, I was probably undercutting myself a bit earlier. I've probably been toying with gender for years and just not put together or been able to admit that that's what I was doing.
That's actually really cool. Most trans people also suffer from personality dysphoria, meaning they hated the person they were before their transition. Not all trans people think this way, obviously, but a decent amount. So even if you discover that you're not trans, that's a really cool thing to note. About transitioning out away from Ben, who would you become? I would say that's a question to ask yourself, and let me just say, in retrospect, yeah, college was a bad fucking place to do some self-exploration, because it's more impactful if done around friends and people that genuinely care about you. Not as, like, a slight against you, by the way, but more of a maybe you should try this again with your friends kind of way.
Damn, that's like the exact opposite of what you hear when people talk about college and identity, but shit if it ain't true.
Yeah, I have no idea why people say college is where your life changes. It doesn't. Like, seriously, I explored my identity way more after I stopped college and actually had time to do so.
As far as who I'd become, yeah, I think that's still something to ask myself. And also, I'm definitely talking to my therapist about this tomorrow, who I know has a lot of experience dealing with people discovering they're trans. But I sort of maybe have a name I thought up. Not that a name is all it takes to be trans, or even trans people have to change their names, etc., etc. But it's something to start with, yeah?
Yeah, everyone's got to start somewhere.
So, I'll tell it to you, but you gotta promise not to laugh.
Is it Roxy?
Fuck no!
Good, because I would have laughed. I promise not to laugh if it's literally anything else.
That was the name I chose at college. That shit's forever tainted.
Fair enough, fam.
Nah, see, the thing is, you still will laugh. Because you, and probably only you, will understand just how fucking ironic this shit is.
Oh shit.
So, how do you feel about violatorial airs?
The next day, I wanted to have a meeting with my therapist. However, due to COVID-19, we had been doing meetings over Zoom, and while I was fine just doing them in my basement at whatever hour during the day, I didn't want to do it at a time or at a place where anyone else could hear us. So, for privacy's sake, I drove out in my car to the parking lot of my local supermarket, and I had my meeting on call over here. And I didn't really know how to start out this discussion, so I decided to start it with a poem that I wrote maybe half a year before I had started thinking about all these things. A poem that you will probably be familiar with, as it's the one I used to start this video. It's called The Changeling, and it certainly talks a lot about my own feelings of insecurity and of this complexity of identity that I was feeling at the time, and to some extent still feel. And I explained that while I had written it at the time, it certainly didn't have anything to do with gender, at least to me. But now looking back on it, that's all I can really think of when I read it. Like, it's so explicitly gender. How could it be about anything else, right? And, to this day, I still think that it's about a lot more than that, but clearly that was one of the things going through my mind at the time. And I explained to my therapist that I had been feeling a lot of things about my own identity recently, and I didn't really know how to process a lot of it. And she said that that was fine, that there were things that this kind of made sense with, and that she would be willing to help me no matter what my decision eventually was. And I continued to think a lot about it from there. I continued to think about it a lot. I continued to have conversations with my friend Citrus, where we would say things like, whatever you say, Violet Tory Garden, and I am a moth, fuck you, and all sorts of great things like that. And this would culminate about a month later, where I would once again go into my car so that no one else could hear me, and I would talk with my therapist again and say, after considering all of these things, I think I'm ready to believe in myself as a woman. I'm ready to be Violet. That night, after talking with my therapist, I had dinner with my dad. And I said, I have something I need to talk to you about, and it's nothing bad, but it's important. And that's that I'm trans, and I'm a woman. And he was happy that I was able to tell him. And I remember distinctly, he would be the first of many people I would come out to respond with, I can't really say I'm surprised, which has always been a beautiful thing to hear from people whenever I've said something like this. It's, even if at the end of the day it might be a little stifling and a little presuming of my previous actions meaning something to be with gender, it's still affirming for me personally, at least. And I remember then, not long later, talking with my mom at some ungodly hour of the morning and telling her that I was trans, and her not really knowing how to respond, but still being supportive. She wasn't even sure if she should be thanking me or congratulating me for telling her, or wasn't clear what she should be doing. I think my favorite was coming out to my siblings, where I sort of, as a joke, just told them offhandedly, mid-conversation, just, oh, and yeah, by the way, I'm trans. And that actually led to maybe my favorite interaction, which is what my sister-in-law told me, which is, to this day, maybe the greatest reaction I've ever had to my coming out, which was her going, "Oh man, that sucks for you. Being a girl is the worst." Which, again, to me is maybe the most accepting I could ever have hoped from a family member like that. And I guess ultimately my takeaway from this experience is I'm so grateful to be so lucky to be surrounded by friends and family that are willing to accept me, because I know, especially in the time that I live in, that's not always the case. And I can see it every day in a society that I know won't always accept me. But I'm still glad that I came out, and I'm still glad that I'm continuing to live this way. And I can't know what the situation of anyone watching this video might be. I don't know if you're in a situation that will grant you the same kindness as I was given, but if you think you can, if you think that you have people around you who will support you even a little bit, I think it's worth being yourself, no matter what that might mean, whether that's gender or anything else. So, thank you to everyone in my life who's accepted me. Thank you to Abigail Thorne for making an incredible video that helped your audience feel what it was like to be trans. Thank you to all of the trans creators who continue to inspire me. And thank you to SourCitrus, both for talking to me in that one life-changing conversation in the dead of night, and also for providing your voice for this video here. And if you guys want to hear more from her, she's a VTuber and a Twitch streamer whose Twitter and Twitch I will have linked down in the description. There will also be that PhilosophyTube video because it's such an important thing to my transition. And yeah, I think that's about everything I wanted to say in this video. But if you'll indulge me, I actually do want to end with the reading of another poem that I wrote nearly a year after I wrote that one that I began this video with. And this one is entitled A Changeling Reformed. It's a bit sappy. I don't think it's anywhere near as polished as that first one ever will be. But it's one that I believe in nonetheless. This is A Changeling Reformed by Violet Toriel Ayres. The changeling is a child, newborn and innocent. She has only existed for a few short months, yet she is already learning to walk and to talk. The changeling is an adult. She has found her own agency, and though the weight of the world still rests upon her, she has learned to divide it, to itemize, and to attack instead of succumb. The changeling is a teenager. Her appearance and voice are changing. She is more than slightly awkward. She still feels silly in her new, colorful skin. She lies when she says she isn't afraid of what people think of her. She tells the truth when she says that she doesn't care. The changeling is an old man. She earned her scars from a long life, a past life, where someone else would wear her skirt and lipstick. The changeling is a woman. Her hair and nails are long. She is nurturing and maternal. She leads with neither brawn nor brain, but heart. She longs for beauty and magic and ponies. She even once loved a boy, though that all seems so long ago now. The changeling was a boy. Her shoulders are still wide. She is still deft with a razor. She still has the strength to fight and the kindness to not. She still longs, one day, for a wife and a daughter, though that all seems so long ago now. The changeling is a creation, more than her sum, but still made of pieces. Television and family and internet and friendship and music and games, reconstructed into something greater. It's all there in her name, after all. The changeling knows that the self is flexible. What held true yesterday can change with the drop of a hat, and that knowing oneself is an ever-going process, always changing, always learning, always growing, and yet knowing that which stays the same. The changeling's hive was built among friends and with their help. How silly she must have been to ever think it might be the other way around. The changeling does not hate the skin that she has shed. She is proud of what she is, who she had been. She thinks that perhaps there is still room for one like him. Perhaps that can still be her, even if the skin changes. The heart will stay true. The changeling's life is comfortable, but she has earned it. The changeling's life is stressful, but it is worth living. The changeling's life is synthesized, but it is human. The changeling's life is serious, but there is still room for dreams. The changeling needs her space, but will always make time for friends. The changeling needs to be loved, and she is blessed to say that she still is. The changeling will always be, the changeling has always been, the changeling has finally changed, the changeling can be anything. But she has learned to be herself, and that is more than enough. I'll see you guys next month, and I hope you have a good time. Bye-bye.